Welcome back to the Real News Network. Once again, we're joined by Victor Navasky, who was the editor and publisher of The Nation magazine, now the emeritus publisher, and now teaches at the Columbia School of Journalism and is chair of the Journalism Review there, and is author of Mission Accomplished: How George Bush Won the War in Iraq, which obviously is a little humorous. So we're talking about Obama, the challenges, and now the left and the progressive movement. The Nation for decades has been one of the leading magazines that articulated a liberal left position, progressive position. So you're talking about how the issue, the work now is how to push or pressure the Obama administration. So what's your conception of how that happens?
Well, first of all, it has to do with supporting and aiming at the Congress and getting them to support legislation that you believe is desirable, and helping to punish those who resist that, regardless of party. And secondly, it's reminding the administration of its highest obligations and ideals. How you do that is an interesting question in an era when you have an administration that's come into power using this new form of communication to raise money, but also to communicate. So, for example, on the week of Inauguration Day, Obama put forth a request from his people that they do an act of service, and he symbolically went and put blue paint on a shelter for kids. And on the block where I live, West 67th Street, a woman, Sarah Kovner, who was on his email list, got a thing, will you be of service? And she saw that the food kitchens, the soup kitchens on the west side were down on food. So she called my wife to say, would you be the captain of your building? She's calling someone in every building on the block to provide food for soup kitchens on the west side. So she told my wife 5 to 10 minutes after she said to the Obama people that she would take responsibility for the west side of Manhattan, she got a half dozen emails from people who live near her saying, I want to help. Now, there's only so much you can do bottom up, but he comes with a network of folks out there that has instant communication. And what seems to me, one of the opportunities and one of the necessities is not to let that become in the wrong hands. That's a fascist network. It's you press a button and the word goes forth and people follow. It's to use that to pressure from the bottom up internally, in addition to the normal ways that the media and political activists pressure externally through protests and through articles and through dialogue. So that's one part of it. To me, the best thing about Obama was his race speech. And when he was up against the wall because of charges about Reverend Wright and all that, and instead of speaking defensively, he got up above it and used it as a teaching moment. And that to me said, I want a president who can do that, and spoke to whites and blacks and raised the whole tone of the thing and beat that problem, which a lot of people thought would do him in. And so you have a person who, however lacking he may be in giving us his overarching vision in advance, which is what you were asking me about, is supremely good at reacting in a non-defensive, smart, and
I wind
way.
up in the position of having to fight all these people I love and respect, like
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Because I'm going to fight with you now.
Good. Okay, good.
In that race speech, it wasn't
Yeah.
mostly about race. That race speech was mostly about Reverend Wright's blowback comments. And this, everyone focuses on the part of the speech which was about race, which I agree was mostly quite eloquent, although even there I thought he kind of tried way too hard to say the problem's not systemic. But on the blowback comments, he went after Wright and said the real problem is the evildoers, and he
Well, no, but on the
once
blowback
again,
comments, he said the problem with Reverend Wright's formulation, and I owe him everything and all of that. And the reason he couldn't cite that speech later on the campaign was because he said, I could no more turn my back on Reverend Wright than I could on my white grandmother, and then he turned his back on Reverend Wright, which Wright invited it, made it necessary for him
right,
to do.
pushed him over the edge.
Yeah. So, but his basic answer to that, as I remember it, was that the problem with the Reverend's analysis was he assumes a static situation, and it's not static. It's dynamic. It's changing, and you can change it, and we can change it, and that was
on the race side.
This is
But on the blowback
inspirational.
side,
Well,
on the race side, he said it's not static. But on the blowback side, he gave a very conventional foreign policy position that the problem is the terrorists, the problem is the bad guys, and Israel is not to blame. He gave a very he essentially refuted the whole idea of blowback.
Yeah, we can go down the positions that he espoused in the course of the campaign and check off where we agree and disagree. And I don't disagree with you on his statements on Israel and the Middle East, and I don't disagree with you on statements about Afghanistan. On the other hand, what you call the race part of his race speech, which I saw as the center of his race speech, and was the issue that was in the headlines for the week before and the week after, it seemed to me he showed that he has an intellect and a character and a personality that's going to serve us well in this.
On the level of intellect and caliber, I haven't seen anything close to him in that level of politics in a long time. So talk a little bit more. The issue of the progressive movement, at what point do you get into the fight? And by that I mean, like right now there's a big debate, stimulus package, no stimulus package, how big should it be?
I think you
but
get
the teeth in the
I think you get in the fight from day one. You push for what you regard as the, it's not a utopian program, but you push for, what Michael Harrington used to call the leftmost side of the possible. And you do it with all of your energy and your forces, and you do it through protest, and you do it through literature, and you do it through debate. However, you don't necessarily assume that because he's made this appointment or that appointment, that he is either that he's evil, or that he is beyond redemption, or that so it's how you do it and the spirit in which you do it. But I think you do it from day one, and that you become a force that he has to contend with, to win your allegiance, your energy, your support, etc., and a force that is going to make it easier for him to make international accommodations and other things that have not been part of the American possibility in the last 4 or 8 years.
To what extent do you think that the progressive movement, liberal movement, left movement has to identify where they differ and where they agree with Obama, but start staking out a more independent position from Obama? Because right now everything is seen as sort of an ancillary to him.
Well, there is no movement, progressive movement. There are a lot of different movements out there. So, and I think that it has to be an independent, they have to be independent movements. That our job is not to support Obama and whatever at all costs, no matter what he says, etc. And you pick and choose the issues. But if he's got a piece of legislation, you basically.
So what will be the key issues for you? Just quickly, what's the litmus test issues where you think the big battles are going to be, and what you'll judge him by?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I had a long conversation with Joe Stiglitz on what are the markers to judge his economic policy by. And he's got the ones we talked about before a little bit. The initial investment has to be larger than we're talking about, and it's got to be sequential. He's got a way of talking about TARP, which is more technical than I can do, but how you deal with that, he can lay it out for you. And to me, the nationalization question is important. He's got to be unafraid to nationalize these banks. Now, the way you do it doesn't mean you go in, you take them over, and the government runs them from here to eternity. It means, nevertheless, that you take them over and you don't just give them the money and say,
Is there any suggestion that's on the agenda?
And there's no suggestion. No one is talking at nationalization, but there are conversations that are going. This sounds very much like nationalization, and it becomes one of these things when what's capitalism and what's socialism, it doesn't matter what you call it. The government has to take responsibility for these financial institutions as a second thing, and I want to see what that happens. And then the global economy. I look to leadership from people like Stiglitz and Greider, though, to help us define what those markers are. Internationally, I think it's a big mistake to increase the militarization of foreign policy, starting in Afghanistan, but across the board. So I look for that across the board, and I look for international initiatives to build up international institutions. Investing in peace in the Middle East is a very good investment for the world community and for the Middle East itself. And so those are the areas that I start out with.
All right, so in maybe 2 or 3 months, we'll come back and we'll ask you how you think he's doing.
Okay.
And we'll do these periodic checkup reports.
Okay. It's a date.
Good. Thanks very much. Thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the Real News Network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington, there's a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. Reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea. Why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country's governed is going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists, only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the Real News.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.